Welcome to the Mind in My Creative Business podcast, where you can get strategy and structure and self-development. It's the number one spot for all three of those for creative entrepreneurs. Listen, I am your host, ShySpeaks.
And I'm your host, Ron Ironic Lee. And today is episode 1 of the Mind of My Creative Business podcast. And today's episode is, what is a creativepreneur?
What is it, right? So we can answer that ourselves, and we plan to give our own definitions, but we found a definition that we just think is great. There was a young lady who said that she was out and about at a networking event, and somebody asked her, what do you do? She says, well, I actually help creative entrepreneurs. And they were like, oh, cool. Wait, what's a creative entrepreneur? And so we know that some of you guys listening may have the same question. So let's give the definition that she gave. We think it's really cool. Let's check it out. Ron, give it to him.
All right. So her definition is a person who uses their creative abilities to make money. It's one thing to be a painter, but a creative entrepreneur or creativepreneur takes their paintings and creates a business model around selling them to sustain a living for themselves.
Okay, listen, let's get right here. 2 key words: business model, and then sustain a living. I just love those two together, right? So especially as a creativepreneur, like as a creative, I would love to be able to take my creativity and all its beauty, build a business model, and then here's the part: sustain a living. Ain't no starving artists. We sustain a livings out here with this definition. That's why I love it.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
No, like you said, so that's her definition, right? So I have another definition that I came up with. I think it's complimentary. I think they're both good. But hey, let me share this one. So my definition. Go ahead.
Yeah, because like it's just the whole idea of like being able to sustain a living, but then it's like, well, what if, how can I sustain a living if it like, if I'm just doing creativity myself versus like, how do I become an entrepreneur? Like get a definition. You may be able to help me, right?
You good. All right. So my definition of a creativepreneur is a talented or skillful person who uses their creativity to build a business around a personal mission, passion, or purpose.
Run it back.
All right. A creativepreneur is a talented or skillful person who uses their creativity to build a business around a personal mission, passion, or purpose.
Okay. So what I love about that definition is the personal mission, the impact, the purpose, the passion. I love that because it's not just a creative skill. It has an expanded view, but the thing that's still there, that was there in the first definition said business model. Your definition, Ron's definition, says build a business. So we still have something there around business and building something and some type of model. And so the reason why that's important is because I heard this one guy, he's an online guru, so to speak. And he was talking about the difference in between an artisan and an entrepreneur, right? Or artisan and the entrepreneur, and how the artisan just wants to do the thing. They just want to create, and they can't be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, but they can be a creative entrepreneur according to the definition. Let's be clear. But I understand why he's saying that. And while I disagree with the notion to a degree, I understand, because there does come a point in time where there's time and then there's a demand, right? So like if you're making, for example, pastries, if you're making pastries for one local restaurant, like they love the way your stuff say, hey, bring it on down here, bring your pastries, I'm gonna sell them. And at the end of the day, or at the end of the week, however many I sell, you get a profit. You're in business because now you're selling a thing. You're using your creativity, your culinary skills, and now you're right. So am I right, Ron? They in business at that point,
right?
Yeah, so the issue though is when demand happens, when that one restaurant owner tells another friend or a buddy of his, and it's like now you have 5 restaurants that all want your pastries in their restaurant. Like we want a local custom baked goods from you. So now you still got the same amount of time in a day. So how are you going to meet that demand? Or maybe it's not word of mouth that happened. Maybe it's you have a personal mission, like Ron said in his definition of passion, and you're passionate about like bringing joy to the elderly community and honoring our elders. And your way of doing that is to have them fresh blueberry muffins in the morning at senior living facilities, something with a smile, right? So now you now have to go out and find the senior living facilities that are going to let you have those pastries in there. So now you went from one restaurant, now you got four restaurants because he told you uh uh talked about you to all of his friends and all his restaurants. And now your personal mission, you want to start supplying senior living and retirement homes with these pastries. Okay, cool. So now you have to go out and actually seek this business. So you're going to go create some demand for yourself. So you got to go do that. Now, look, the time is going to take you to send the emails, reach out to the people at the senior facilities or the retirement homes. It's going to take away from your time that you can be actually creating the pastries. So
Right.
you have to kind of choose at some point what to do. So I understand why you said that, because there's this whole time and demand piece. Ron, you got to, some of you want
Yeah,
to.
no, and this is kind of I understand what you're saying, and I understand what he's saying as well, right? So Michael Gerber in the book the E Myth Revisited, he calls them technicians, right? And that's what you're saying, like an artisan, where like you're gifted at this thing, right? And because you're gifted at this thing, you're like, okay, I'm going to start a business, but not understanding that in starting a business, there's certain systems, processes, all these things are business model that you have to put in place in order for you to run the business. But you're just thinking, because I'm gifted at this and I want to generate revenue at this, that, okay, this can be a business. And it's not that simple, right? You can, and it's a difference between, once again, generating revenue, utilizing your skill. Like you said, okay, I'm a baker or a painter, so I paint paintings for people, right? But that's just a one-off type thing, opposed to saying, okay, no, I have a business model now to where instead of me painting people for individuals or whatever the case may be, I may be painting paintings or painting stuff or providing paintings to the Marriott or the Hilton or, all these different things. So now you're going to need a business model to be put in place, because of you're going to have more that increases now. You know what I'm
The
saying? So
demand.
that demand increases. So now you have to put a model in place, right? You have to put systems, processes in place in order for that to happen, because you doing it by yourself. If the demand is high, you're not going to be able to keep up with the demand.
Right. And one of the things, like, you and I talk about business all the time. And one of the things you talked about is the team, right? Like getting some type of teammate. We talked about systems and things like that in place, but you probably just need to get another person, right? So now you went from one restaurant to four restaurants. Now you probably just need to go ahead and hire an agent or a manager of some sort who can reach out to those retirement homes and those senior living facilities. And going back to my earlier example, to go ahead and actually seek that business out for you. So now they become like a marketing arm or an advertising arm. They're doing sales or some kind of thing like that for you, so that you're not having to do that for yourself. And in essence, they may not be your employee, but you may contract them to go do that, to help you expand your business so you can have more demand. But then that's just that side. But even in the creative side, you may need to get you a teammate, right? You need somebody who can kind of help you prep some stuff or something like that. Like, I mean, I'm just trying to help them out. Like, give them some
Well,
examples.
no, like I said, it's that who, not how model. Once again, going back to that artisan or the solopreneur or whatever, when you're trying to do everything yourself and thinking you have to do everything yourself because you're not understanding that, okay, I need to create a business model. It's like, okay, well, instead of me trying to figure out how to do this, let me figure out who can I bring aboard, who can assist me, right? And I think me and we talked about just the analogy of like Michael Jordan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before Michael Jordan had Scottie Pippen, before Michael Jordan had Phil Jackson, before he had his trainer, right? They was getting knocked out of the playoffs early, right? But once he had these other who's, okay, who do I need in place to assist me on the court? Okay, bet we got Scottie Pippen, we got Dennis Rodman, we got all these other pieces. That's on the court. Okay, who can I assist me to get my body to a place to where I can withstand going to Detroit? Shout out Bad Boys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who can I assist in me bulking up to where I'm not beat up and bruised at the end of the season? Who can we assist that can now look off the court and see what we need to put in place as far as from a coaching standpoint? And then we know the history of what happened when that took place. So a lot of times it's not about the how to do it, right? It's about who do I need in place? Like you mentioned with your thing. Okay, if I'm a pastry chef, right, I might need somebody that I might need a sous chef, somebody that can help with preparation, right? Like you said, I might need somebody to go out and get the deals that I need with these assisted living homes or whatever the case may be, because I don't have the time to do it. Like we going back to what you're saying. There's only 24 hours in a day. There's only so much time and energy that I have personally, individually, right? But once again, when you become an entrepreneur or a solopreneur or creativepreneur, right, there's other things that you have to do, right? You need somebody that can do the accounting, right? You need somebody that can do sales. You need somebody that can do marketing, right? So these are who's instead of how. But when you get caught up in the how, now you're removing yourself from what it is that you were doing initially or what you wanted to do initially. And then you hate entrepreneurship. Then you like, this ain't what I signed up for. Actually, it is what you signed up for. You was just trying to do everything yourself because you approached it from a how instead of a who standpoint.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Don't hit them with it. It was what you signed up. You was just trying to do everything yourself, being a solopreneur and not a creativepreneur. Okay, now the cool thing about the Minding My Creative Business podcast is the fact that we're not just going to give opinions here, right? Ron and I, we have personal experience. I personally, as soon as I started my creative endeavors, I had to get a booking agent, somebody to help me manage the incoming bookings and even seek out other opportunities. So I know it personally, but we're not just going to give personal opinion. We are going to give facts. So I have a statistic that I want to share with you, right? I got the stats, okay? So, based on an analysis of 101 startups post-mortem, and that is after the business failed, right? Post the business died. Okay.
Right.
So this is a actual reputable study. Study shows that 42% of the time business fell because there was no market. Okay. 29% of the time it fell because they ran out of cash. But then there was 23% of the time the business failed because they just did not have the right team. So the who does matter, right? Yeah. It definitely matters. Now, we talked a lot about the who, but we got to go back to the how, because the how matters as well, right? That's my side, right? That's the part that I care about, because how a thing runs is just as important as who's running it. Okay. So when I say that, I'm talking about, because we talked about delegation. That's one aspect of a how. But there's also batching. There's also automations. Let me give you some examples real quick.
Hold on. Listen, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Like, I want you to go where you're going.
Yeah.
But I also I don't want to brush over those first two stats. And I know that I'm going off the script, but I don't want to brush over those first two stats. The number one stat was the reason why businesses fail is there's no market. Right. And a lot of times as creatives, we think because we creators and we're talented and gifted that people want what it is that we have to offer. And that's not the case. So I just wanted to touch on that, but we're going to definitely delve in that in later episodes, because that's going to be huge, is being able to understand that the market is important. And then that other one is they ain't got no capital, so they ain't got no cash flow. Right. So that's another,
those are big,
right?
Again, the 23% was no team. So
exactly,
but it's like, the mother, we're not gonna skim over
those. Yeah. I mean, so this, but yeah, but back to the delegation and automation. I'm sorry, I wanted to just let them know. Well, we gonna touch on those. No, we moving today. But other later episodes, we're going to touch on it. So go ahead.
Because again, we got to keep it rolling. Because again, the title of this episode is, what is a creativepreneur? So we just trying to make sure that creative entrepreneurs understand that to shift that solopreneur versus that true creativepreneur kind of has to have the right people in place in some kind of way, right? And so I talked about delegation. We talk about batching and automation. These are the things that I love. Now, okay, so I love the pastry example that I'm giving in batching. You see what I did there? Pastries, batching, a batch of, you get it. Pardon my poetry. Okay, but seriously speaking, if I'm making pastries for one restaurant, I cook this way. But when I'm making pastries for 4 restaurants, now I have to go and batch it a different way, right? So it's the same amount of time,
Right.
but instead of just sliding one pan of baked goods in the oven, I need to slide like 4 different pans in there. And if my oven is not big enough, I need to go somewhere where I can actually cook multiple things in the same amount of time. Because at some point you can't always just you can't create new time. The demand is there, can't create new time. So if I have 2 hours to bake and my oven only holds 2 batches, I need to go somewhere else where I can have more than one stove, right? So I can slide 6 pans in there, right? So now I'm batching same amount of time and I'm able to supply 4 different restaurants in the same amount of time that it took me to do one. I don't know if y'all understand the beauty of that. That's just
right. And that's the thing too. A lot of people are like, well, where am I going to go, right? And we talked about, well, so there may be a commercial kitchen that you may need to rent out, right? So where okay, they rent out you space. Like you don't got to rent it out all day every day, but just certain times of the week. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna rent this out. Right. So you're able to do more. And yes, you've created an expense, but be mindful. You've also generated more revenue because now you're servicing more businesses with your service or with your product. So, okay, I can justify this expense now because I have more. The demand has increased. I need this in order to meet the demand. So it makes sense.
Right. That's batching, okay?
Right.
Because a culinary kitchen, they normally sometimes have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stoves in there. So you can slide multiple things in there in that same amount of time. And that applies to other things as well, right? So I've seen painters, they come out, they set up several canvases, right? I have enough paint for three canvases in front of me, and I'm going boom, boom, boom. Now that's another level of creativity, genius, but obviously we're not doing one by one no more. I need to do 3 paintings and I'm going to work 3 different concepts at once, right? Looks the same way for content creators. I have videos to put out. I need to put out 10 videos in a month. So instead of me doing one video by one video by one video by one video, I am actually going to go somewhere, sit down, and I'm going to try to go ahead and record all 10 all at once. You see, that's a different thing. So batching matters. This is how you shift, right? I don't want to get too far into the how, but I'm just because I want to talk about it, but I'm just giving you an example. The how does matter. There is automation as well. I can get into automation in future episodes, right? In fact, yeah, we probably need to do that on the next episode. Yeah, that's what it is. We're gonna unpack automation on the next episode. That's something that I really love. But I just want you to understand that the who does matter and the how does matter. Maybe you can approach it in a different way, how you're doing it to meet the demand so that you're a true creative entrepreneur, or you need to look at who you need. Now, that's enough for right now. We're going to actually go a little bit further with explaining what a creative entrepreneur is. But first, we got to play these bills. And you want to stick around for these next definitions, because it's actually like it gets more in depth, right? Who a creative entrepreneur is, what are these categories and all that kind of stuff. Just give me a second. We got to pay these bills. Let's get it.
What's the irony?
It's because it's us in different color clothing. I mean, listen, we've been doing a lot of talking, and we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to make a statement as well.
Because we've seen people make statements with their athletic apparel. We've even seen people make statements as entrepreneurs. But one thing I haven't seen is somebody make a statement as a creative entrepreneur. So what we've done is we have given you an opportunity to make a statement as a creative entrepreneur.
Okay. So if they want to make sure that they're rocking that creativepreneur gear, where can they go get that?
You can go get that gear from whatstheirony.com.
I talked about going to pay these bills. Normally on these podcasts, people are going to head over to a sponsor. Look, this is episode number 1. We the sponsor. Okay, no, seriously. We want to make sure that you can be the sponsor, seriously, by being able to grab your gear. What you get also helps support the channel, support the podcast. So yes, get your gear. Let's keep it moving, Ron. You ready?
Yes. So we talked about, once again, who is a creative entrepreneur? So we want to see those who identify, right? So we talked about the identity of a creativepreneur. So it's breaking down to 4 categories. All right. So I'm gonna give you a couple, and then Shy gonna give you a couple. So let's start. Number 1, right? The first category of identity for a creativepreneur is artists, right? So your artists, these are designers, photographers, videographers, writers, illustrators, calligraphers, right? These people have services that they sell in order to make money doing what they love. All right. Keyword is services that they sell. All right. Next, I have shakers, right? So your shakers, these are health and life coaches, therapists, nutritionists, bloggers. They do activities. They're creative consultants, right? They use their leadership skills to coach others or share their message while also making a profit, right? So those are your shakers.
Right. So I like that, because then you have artists, they have a service, and then they're selling the service. Shakers are kind of using their leadership skills, maybe their proprietary approach to things to like share a message that then makes a profit.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there's a profit there. Okay. It's a profit for the creative entrepreneur. Okay. So we're talking about who is a creative entrepreneur. Like, am I one? I don't know if I'm an artist. I don't know if I'm a shaker. Okay. We got 2 more. So, okay. This it says there are makers. Let me give you the definition of that. Okay, makers, florists, jewelry makers, hatters, painters, clothing designers that make a physical product with their talents to sell to consumers. Okay, got that one. And then you have movers. Movers are people who are like yogis and dancers, musicians, personal trainers, creative store owners. They use their creative talents and training, right, to make a living with their skills. So it's a little bit different there.
Right.
But again, you see that there's several layers, several different, a full variety of people, from designers to florists to musicians to trainers to life coaches to creative consultants that fall and fit within this creative entrepreneur space. But let me go back and make it clear. A maker, they're selling a physical product. A mover is taking their creative talents plus their training and using that to make a living off of their skills. Okay. Then Ron talked about the artists and the shakers. Artists are selling a service, shakers, leadership skills, proprietary process, messaging, and all that kind of stuff to make a profit.
Exactly.
Ooh,
Now, and listen, my wife, she would always say, she was like, because I'm a coach, right? So that's one of my creative businesses is a coach. And she was like, but all your clients are not like creatives. In her mind, she's thinking like artsy creative, right? But once again, when I gave her the definition and said, no, it's not just limited to artsy creatives. It's limited to, once again, creatives as a whole, to where, once again, we just gave you that list. So then she was able to see it clear. Like one of my clients is they have a nonprofit. She has a nonprofit called Dove Networks. And her mission is she wants to eradicate the effects and this domestic violence, period, right? She wants to get rid of domestic violence and eradicate its effects, right? So she's created a nonprofit, but she identifies as a creative entrepreneur or a creativepreneur because this is something that she's had this idea, this passion, going back to the definition, passion and mission and purpose, right? And then she's created this nonprofit. So though it's a nonprofit business model, it's still a business model around something that she's passionate and purposeful about.
And I would imagine she takes her leadership skills and she has some type of creative approach to how she's choosing to eradicate it.
Definitely.
And she's a shaker because she's out here moving and shaking with people who need to be, whether they're in the political space or people who are just from the healing space, people, whatever space, she's working with those people and bringing them all together to help do a thing. Like,
exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Now, okay. So I say that we see this oftentimes when we talk about shakers. We see that with like the health professionals more often. So when we're talking to creative entrepreneurs and you're telling them like, no, you can be a creative entrepreneur and actually like not just be a solo artist. I mean, you can get this thing going. and you can develop a whole world around just your, it's kind of hard for their minds to wrap around it. But with the health space, I see like Dr. Oz, right? Dr. Oz, there's another lady, she was the green smoothie lady. Green smoothies became a thing because she started realizing that just these green juices, which is what her creative approach is, not super duper culinary, but it's her creative approach to how she's combining these foods. She's blending it up a certain way, and she's noticing that it has a certain effect. She puts people on a 10-day green smoothie cleanse, and at the end you'll have lost all this weight. That's her approach. So now she becomes what, a shaker, and she's a creative entrepreneur because now she's selling this in books. She's in media. She's on podcasts talking about it. So does Dr. Oz. He's on media, TV shows, books, all that stuff is writing, right? That's kind of a creative thing. Like media, this is like entertainment and all that kind of stuff. So we see shakers, because you're like, man, shakers, that don't really sound like creative entrepreneur. Yeah, Dr. Oz, he's a doctor, but he's not selling at this point, selling his service as a doctor. He's selling his leadership in a health and wellness space, packaging it with creative things like media and books and coaching and all that kind of stuff to achieve a personal mission. That is creativity, people. So I'm just saying, if you want to know what that looks like, you can look right there.
No, that's it. That's it. When we was talking earlier, we talked about my brother Jason Wilson. Same thing, right? Where and even him, I've seen him like kind of go through the process. Like you may start at one of these things, right? And then you may move to another one. You may actually do all four, right? You're not limited, right? I mean, as a coach, I tell people to kind of niche down, but just because you niche down, I mean, you got to stay in that niche. But I've seen Jason, when I first met Jason, he had a ceramic tile company, right? He was providing a service, right? He would go in, create the design, but then he'd go in and lay it down. He provided a service. Then he started a Christian hip hop label, right? So now he's creating a product. So he went from the service piece, the artist, then to the what's the other one? I'm maker. He went to the maker, to where now we're making music, we're making product. We made CDs. Some of those CDs on the wall back there, right? And then he went from that to a nonprofit organization now, right? So where now he's the shaker. So he has a nonprofit. He's written 2 books, right? He has his academy. So they have a documentary out on him. So it's like, you can be in those different, but I've seen him matriculate through the different phases and whatnot. And yeah, so he's a creative.
Wow. And I'm happy we're giving these examples, because again, when I talk to my friends sometimes who are creativepreneurs, and they're maybe at the entry level where they're still in that solopreneur space, and they are doing the thing, kind of like what we talked about at the beginning of the episode, where the guy was like, they're a technician or an artist, but they haven't like embraced the whole entrepreneur piece. They're still doing it. They don't see themselves as being able to have a big business. They see business as like this big thing, big, but like it can literally start with your creativity, right? So, okay, so I want to bring up, when we say, man, I've been working with some of the biggest brands, most of the time, because of the way society is, that means I'm working with big businesses like Apple and Facebook and Samsung and Nike, and you're thinking big brand when you think of those things. You really think big business. The thing I love about brand, though, being tied to business, is that you personally can have a brand, right? You as an artist can have a personal brand, and as it grows and scales, it can become big business. How do we know? Ask Walt Disney. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, no, listen, Walt Disney is the epitome of a creativepreneur, right? Where he started off as a cartoonist, right? But he had a vision for what he wanted to do. So he went from being a cartoonist to creating a business model, and he employs other cartoonists, right? He literally isn't the one who does the drawings. I mean, obviously he's long gone by now, but even back then, he wasn't the one doing all the drawings, right? He was able to employ other artists. He was able to employ other people to get stories so that they could build the things from. Then he went to an amusement park. Then they went to merchandising, like all these things. But it started from this one person who had this gift and this talent and this skill as a cartoonist, right? But then he wanted to be a creativepreneur, And then he took that and created a business model. And when you think of Disney, you now think of a lot of things. You think of Marvel now. They were able to acquire Marvel. You think of Pixar. They were able to acquire Pixar. You know what I'm saying? Like you think of ESPN. They were able to acquire ESPN.
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's
and when we and all the time when we think of Disney, we think big business, Disney. But
right.
Disney is it was
It's a
really
person.
Walt Disney. It was a person who was a creative who
Period.
decided to be a creative entrepreneur. Come
Period.
like that is ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
That's crazy.
and it's really that simple, right? Now, mind you, you may say, "Well, I don't want to be like Disney. I don't want to be that big. You want to be smaller." I say that, but that's the beauty of it. Is like being a creativepreneur. You can create what it is that you want. If you want it to be big, oh, it can be big. If you want it to be small, it can be small. All we just saying is, right? We will help you identify what it is, right, so that you can be clear on what. So then you can have a level of intention behind it, right? That's been my word for the past like 5 to 10 years, is being intentional. As you're intentional, you know what I'm saying, then you can start to operate and walk intentionally and get certain results. So as a creativepreneur, when you start identifying as a creativepreneur, now you're saying, oh, okay, this is who I am. So as a result of this being who I am, this is what I do. And because this is what I do, these are the results that I should expect.
Ooh, this is good. This is good. Oh my goodness. I almost don't want to wrap it up because we don't want the podcast to be too long. That's one of the things you can expect here on the Mind and My Creative Business podcast. This is still episode number 1. So we want to make sure we lay precedence on what you can expect. But listen, what Ron was just saying, bro, what you were just saying was so loaded because it can go as big or as small or however you want it to go. It's especially if you're willing to embrace a business model and build a business system around it and begin to figure out who I need. Do I need other cartoonists? Because I can only draw so much if I'm Walt Disney. And I'm trying to make these characters and I need this show and I need some other people. Or do I need writers and illustrators? Like what do I need? You see, I need music people to put behind the cartoons. And so you can really go as you begin to build a business model around it. That part was so good. Okay, listen, I gotta say this because when we talk about big and small, that is big and small is kind of like it depends on what you look at, how you look at it. Because I wouldn't say it's big or small. I'm gonna say this before we get out of here. Listen. In this example that I talked about earlier, with pastries and all that kind of stuff. Just because you begin to start selling pastries to 1 restaurant, 4 restaurants, 5 senior living homes, people's like, well, that means I just own the business and I don't do anything. Who says? Walt Disney, before he passed, he probably still drew some stuff. He probably was still a cartoonist. He probably still provide. Who's to say that you can't do it at all? That doesn't mean that you no longer have the technical skill, that you are not an artisan, an artisan, you can still do the thing. So in this example that this person was given earlier, who I said it was an online guru, and he talked about the fact that this person was so committed to being the person to do it. When he's so committed, he was talking about being a bottleneck. As long as you're not willing to be the bottleneck, meaning I can only produce the amount of whatever I'm creating, that's the only demand I can meet. He said that there was a guy, he make wallets, genuine leather wallets, super custom and all that kind of stuff. He said in order for him to be an entrepreneur, he would have to stop making wallets and start managing the system. And I feel like it could be a both and especially when you're talking about being a creative entrepreneur. So we talk about, for example, Kanye West, who's an artist, but he then also produces for other people, and he had a label. He didn't have to stop being an artist in order to start a label. He was still able to help them, but that didn't mean every now and then that he can't do his own artistry and get his own message out. So who's to say that? Going back to this wallet, this is what I would tell the online guru. So yes, if he makes 10 wallets a month, and and he's given all his time and effort to doing that, and that's his cap, he's bottleneck right there, you will never get to the point where you can sell 100. I got it. You're right. You'll never get to the 100 because you can only make 10 a month. But what he could do is bring in 2 other people, teach them their way, teach them his ways. They can make 10, right? So now he's making 30, right? He can then hire 10 other people, and now they're all making 100. But that doesn't mean, and he's overseeing them, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't make time, that he still does the thing, right? He still makes the wallets or whatever. So I think it can be a both and, but you will definitely have to spend some time focusing on that entrepreneurial endeavor if you are a creative entrepreneur. That's all I have to say about that. You
No,
got
and like I said, and it can be a season. It doesn't have to be forever, but that's the beauty of it. If you're building a business model around it, you can see, okay, where do I want to be? Like, yes, I encourage you to remove yourself out of it so you can work on it.
right.
That's a whole other concept, right? We're working on the business instead of in it, because working in it, you're not going to see things, right? But remove yourself out so you can work on it, have people working in it. And then when you are working on it enough and you know whatever, then you can bring somebody else to work on it, right? So you can bring a CEO in, and then you can say, okay, now what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Do I want to get back in and make the wallets, using that analogy, all right? Or do I want to do something else? Like, oh, I learned I like this facet of my business. So here, let me work in here. But the business isn't contingent or dependent upon you being in whatever that place is, right? It's once again, because you have systems, you have you've built the model around it. But once you have it to a certain place, you choose what you want to do. And that's the beauty.
Okay, listen, we kind of bleeding into the next episode because this episode was really supposed to be what is a creative entrepreneur. The next episode is how to go from creator to CEO.
Yep.
So we only hit the tip of the iceberg. So if you have identified in this episode that, yeah, I'm a creative entrepreneur, and you're like, okay, now I need to embrace the mindset to be like a founder of a company, and like I need to know, okay, what all other things. Shy talked about automation and batching, and listen, you want to be in on this episode. But first of all, I got to first thank you for being in on this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Ron, you got some other stuff you want to thank them about?
Yeah, no, listen, like you said, thank y'all for being here. You could have chose to listen to any other podcast, but you chose to rock with us, MMCB, the Minding My Creative Business podcast. So thank you.
Thank you.
We also want to invite you guys to be a part of the community that we've created, right? So if you go to mmcbpodcast.com, you can sign up for our Creatives Corner newsletter, which will also invite you to our Facebook community, right? So where it's a private community with other creativepreneurs like yourself, myself, and Shy, right? That are there to help us to grow and build and develop as creativepreneurs as we're on this journey. Because listen, I don't know about y'all, but this journey sometimes it can be interesting for lack of a better word.
Be interesting. And you need somebody to work through these models with. So maybe we're talking about structure heavy, and you're like, okay, I'm really working on this structure, but I'm a creative and how my mind is, and I really want to do it. You could find somebody in the community to work through that with. Maybe strategy. You can find somebody in the community who's working through that. So it's just really a cool place to work on self-development. We do it all with somebody. People who are not just entrepreneurs. And it's different. It's different. Different businesses. It's a whole different model when it's not a creative. You can work with specific people who are creatives, like network with them, talk to them. And of course, we got some perks and all that kind of stuff that we'll be dropping in the community. And of course, the newsletter will just feed you. It'll enrich you and give you that motivation that you need to keep going. Right. So.
Exactly. So listen, don't delay. Go to the website. Be a part of that creative community or Creative Corner, the newsletter and the community. And I mean, that's it. That's all I got. I mean,
so the way you get in that community, right? So you're going to head over to mmcbpodcast.com, mmcbpodcast.com. And there you're going to find an area that says Creatives Corner. Get signed up so you can stay plugged in. Oh, this is going to be good. I'm so excited. This is episode 1. Ron, how do you feel?
No, I feel good. I'm excited. Listen, y'all don't know what it took for us to get here, right? When we talk about this creativepreneur journey and how it's interesting, it's definitely taken us a lot to get to this point. So the fact that we're at episode 1 and our goal is to hit episode 1,000 or whatever the case may be, but just to get to this one, it's been a journey, but we here and we ain't going nowhere. Most high willing, no time soon.
Right. And we want to make sure that you understand that each episode is going to get better and better and better. Why? Because we are going to be interviewing on this podcast the people who are 6, 7, and even 8-figure earners. So the people who are at the height of their creative entrepreneur endeavors, we're going to have you to have access to them. And we're going to ask them questions about their strategy, about their structure, what things that they do to develop into this. Listen, you're going to be able to get it right here on the. Now, sometimes it'll be Ron and I, and we're going to talk our talk, right? But other times we are going to have, like, I'm so excited about the guests. Like, I'm ready to like start asking. We're not asking those basic questions. We're going in, y'all.
Yeah. We want to know how you got there. Well, you know what I'm saying? Like what steps you had to take, what mentality you have to have, right? All the things. So yeah, right. No, we ain't.
What was the strategy? No what punches. Was the campaign? Exactly. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you good. No, that's it.
I was just saying, what was the strategy? What was the campaign? No, okay. What did your back office look like? Yeah. You know, okay. At that point, when did you hire the next person? Okay, when did you contract out that?
Right.
Okay, what systems what tool were you using? What was the software? I'm talking, we're going to be going in. So again, today, what is a creative entrepreneur? We made sure that you understood the definition. You understand that there are artists, makers, movers, and shakers. We hopefully that helped you the way it helped us. And of course, we kind of leaned into the next episode, and that is the creator to CEO model. But you want to be in on the next episode. That's all I have to say so far about all of this.
That's it. So until next time.
Yeah, hold on real quick. Listen. We got something we want to do before we get out of here. Every episode, I have something that I want them to say. I said this is all I wanted to say, but we have to say this at the end of every episode because it's a bit of a mantra for the creative entrepreneur. Okay, so I want y'all to say this out loud with me. Okay, so I want you to say, all it takes is intention, consistency, and laser focus to
mind my creative business.
There it is. All it takes is intention, consistency, and laser focus to mind my creative business. We're going to say that at the end of every episode, every time. All right. My name is ShySpeaks. I've enjoyed being your host.
I am Ron Ironic Lee, and I enjoy being your host as well.
And we are out.